I just switched from the Mavic 2 Pro to the Mini 4 Pro. And here's the reason why.
Aircraft disconnected. I think it fell.
Okay, so about 3 weeks ago, my drone basically crashed, or it dropped out of the air. The battery jumped out of the drone while it was mid-air, and that's after almost 5 years of having the Mavic 2 Pro. Now, I did really love that drone and I was sad to see it go, but about a year ago the sensors kind of stopped working, and while it was in the air, if the sensors were on, you kind of start jittering and doing weird things, so I turned them off. So I've been flying without the sensors for a while, so I kind of had the feeling that this year would be the year where it would just stop flying. Now, I didn't imagine it to be as dramatic as it just dropping out of the sky, and luckily no one got hurt, nothing really happened. The drone was even okay afterwards. I plugged in a little battery and it did look like it could take off, but it didn't feel safe at all to fly it anymore, so I left it behind in Sri Lanka. Now, I wasn't really in the budget to get a new drone, and while we did want to get it sometime in the future, it wasn't actually the plan to get it now. The reason why we got it now is that we just landed a few more collaborations here in Bali, where we are now, and we felt like we needed a drone that was reliable, so we decided to make the jump. Ever since this little guy came out, what, 4 months ago, 5 months ago, I kind of had my eyes on it, and the main reason, of course, is due to its size. Now, I've never had a Mini myself. Actually, the Mavic 2 Pro was my first and only ever drone until this one. So I haven't tested the Minis much apart from Joy having the Mini 2. Unfortunately, the gimbal on that one is a little bit broken, so it's not that reliable, although we have been getting pretty great results with that drone as well. So it was a pretty obvious choice to get this one. The main thing that I had against my Mavic 2 Pro was the weight and size. Now, I am accumulating more and more gear over the years, and while I'm trying to keep it minimal, it just becomes a factor of what weighs what and what takes up the amount of space in the backpack. So the Mini is the perfect size, and that's obviously why we wanted to get it as well. Now, we've only done a very quick test flight with this drone, so I don't really have much to share on it yet in terms of the performance and everything. And since I'm late to the game with this drone anyway, I'm sure there's a lot of other reviews that you can watch, but at the end of the video, I'm going to share what I'm going to do around this drone that I haven't seen yet been done. So if you stick around, I'm going to tell you more about that. But first, I'm going to share my expectations about this drone and why I'm so stoked about it, what I expect to get out of it, and also what I'm not so stoked. First of all, I expect nothing but amazing image quality out of this drone. I think it's the same main camera as the 3 Pro and maybe the Air, I'm actually not entirely sure. But from what I've seen in other videos and from what I know from just the Mini 2, it should be able to produce some pretty great images. So I'm very stoked to play around with it, even though it only has D-Log M and I've been used to D-Log from my Mavic 2 Pro. I'm still super excited to test it out and see how far we can push the image and what we can actually get. Now, the next thing is that I'm expecting to bring this with me pretty much anytime we go out to shoot. Because it's so small and that we have the RC2 controller with it as well, it's just gonna be super easy to bring around anywhere and put up in the air if we need to shoot some drone shots. Whereas with the Mavic 2 Pro, I actually rarely brought it because I wanted to just bring my camera and the drone just took up too much space and weight, as we touched upon before. So I'm expecting to have this drone with me a lot more, and therefore also shooting a lot more drone content that I've done until now. Now, that said, I have shot a lot of drone content over the years, but my main driver is the camera that you're looking at now, the R6 for now. So I'm excited to shoot a lot more drone perspective. The next thing is the vertical mode, and this is actually a feature that I always said that I probably wasn't that excited about because I always shoot horizontal since I use it for these YouTube videos and also for Instagram. So I want to shoot it horizontal so that I have the full real estate to play around with. But when we took it out for a test flight and I turned it around and put it into vertical, it was actually pretty cool. And since we shoot also a lot of content for social media, and especially when we do something like hotel collaborations or brand work that I know is going to be put on social media, I'm actually excited to do the shot twice, one in vertical and one in horizontal, so we can use it for whatever. But I do think the flexibility of having the vertical mode is actually something that I'm going to use way more than I originally anticipated when I didn't have the drone. And the last thing that I'm probably almost the most excited about that is not unique to the Mini 4 Pro itself is the tracking. And if you don't know what it is, essentially you can turn on subject detection, and that allows you to just click on a person or vehicle screen, and then the drone will just keep that in the center. Now you can both do active track, which means that the drone will just fly itself and keep the subject in the center as best as it can. Now you can also put it in spotlight, where the drone will just make sure that the subject is always in the center, but it won't actually fly itself. So you're flying it around, you can do the movements, the drone will just kind of orbit around the subject however you're flying to make sure that the subject stays in the center. And this is something that I've wanted ever since they launched that kind of feature in the first place. I think it first came with the Mavic 3 Pro, if I'm not mistaken, and it's been in, I think, all the drones after that. But I've never gotten to test it out, and I'm so excited because it's gonna make things and shots so much easier when we have a subject in it. Now I'm still gonna fly a lot manually because I love to do that as well, but having those tracking shots is just gonna be so invaluable. So I'm super excited about that. Then there's two things that I am not so stoked about. The first thing is kind of its strength and its weakness, and that's the weight. Obviously, the size and the weight is the reason we got in it in the first place, but it's also something that's a little bit of a concern of mine in terms of how good is it actually going to perform in the wind. So I'm excited to test that out, but also a little bit anxious to send it up if it's very windy, but we'll see how that goes. The good thing is that the Mini is also the cheaper end, not that this is a cheap drone, but the cheaper series. So if we have to replace the drone, hopefully not, it's more affordable than when I had to replace the Mavic 2 Pro. And now the last thing, and this is what I'm the least excited about, is the fixed aperture on this thing. Now I come from, again, the Mavic 2 Pro, and on there you can change the aperture while it's in the air. That makes it super easy to overexpose the footage ever so slightly and get perfect exposure every time, and therefore having more flexibility to work with in the post, in the grading, which is what I do a lot. So this one has a fixed f1.7, which leads in a ton of light. And we don't have any ND filters for it yet. They are coming soon, but that means that the test flight that we did, we had to crank this shutter up to, I don't know, 1/3000, and then there's just no motion blur at all, and that just doesn't look that good. So I'm curious to see how it's gonna work with changing the filters on this drone all the time and getting used to that, because I did use ND filters with the Mavic 2 Pro, but I was just used to slapping on whatever filter I thought was useful now and then just changing the aperture accordingly afterwards. Now I'm gonna have to think a lot more about that. So I'm not so stoked about that part about it. I don't know why they're making the drone so that you can't change the aperture. Maybe something with size or weight or complications, I don't know, but not that excited about that thing, but it is what it is. That's what you get from getting the smaller drone. So that's probably the only major downside, and then the part of the weight is just a little bit of my concern in terms of not wanting to lose the drone in the wind. And then there is the controller. Now we got the RC2 controller because we got the Fly More combo, and I'm actually excited about this controller because it means that since we're sharing the drone, Joy and I, we don't have to connect our phones or anything, we just have this controller. I'm not sure how it works yet with the maps and having that updated, or if we have to connect it to a phone either way, which I think will be a little bit annoying, but we tried it in bright light already, and I feel like it's showing me the same as when I had my phone. I heard some people talk about the brightness being pretty low and hard to see in sunlight, but I had the same issue with my phone, so it's not really a downgrade, if anything, it's just how it is. Alright, so to the small announcement of what I'm gonna do with this drone, apart from using it for all my commercial and YouTube projects, of course, is that I'm gonna make a new series, because this drone was actually not in the budget, since I didn't expect to lose the Mavic 2 Pro already in this year. I didn't really budget for a new drone yet. So I'm planning on making YouTube pay back that drone for me. The way I'm gonna do that is simply making a lot of videos using the drone and getting AdSense money back since the channel is monetized. So that's kind of my plan on getting back. And the way I'm gonna do it, the series that I'm gonna start, is what I'm gonna call Behind the Shot. So essentially, I'm gonna take you with me when we're flying the drones, when we're getting some specific shots or just in locations where I'm gonna get something. I'm gonna walk you through what I'm gonna shoot, how I'm gonna shoot it, what settings we're using, how we're gonna fly it, what I'm thinking about, and showing you the shot obviously as well. And then we're gonna take it back home and I'm gonna show you how we're gonna grade it, how we integrate it into more video and just a clip, and all of that, so you can kind of get it behind the scenes of both how I shoot, how I get the quality that we hopefully get out of this drone, and how to grade it to make it look great afterwards. So that's the whole master plan with this drone, and hopefully everything goes well. And I've earned back what the drone cost me in just a matter of maybe a few months, something out of it. So that also means that if you have any questions in terms of this Mini 4 Pro, that you'd like to know, something that you haven't seen in other videos, or something you would like me to test out, something you want me to show how I do in terms of these drone clips of flying the drone, just leave that down in the comments below, and I'm happy to integrate that in this series and show you how we capture it and how we grade it so that you can get the most out of your drone. Now, if you have any other drone from DJI, you'll be able to do pretty much the same shots unless it's something that's feature specific, like the tracking that not all the drones have. So don't worry, if you have other drones, you can also just ask your questions there. And if it's something specific around that, then of course I can cover that in the video as well. And then lastly, I do know that this drone is kind of considered a beginner's drone, but I'm planning to prove that wrong. Now I know that the Air 3 has 2 cameras and the Mavic 3 has 2 or 3 cameras as well, and crazy, like a lot better cameras, larger sensors and everything. But when it comes to drone quality, I've always felt like, even with my Mavic 2 Pro, that it was a little bit grainy and a little bit mushy in the details. So I'm excited to shoot this drone and still get a lot of great shots out of it, and still use it for pretty much everything that we do, even though it's a small drone and for some consider it more of like a beginner drone. So even though I shoot professionally, this is still the drone of choice, and hopefully it's gonna be worth it, but I'm planning on showing you and convincing myself as well that it definitely was worth it. So with that said, that was just kind of like a mini vlog introduction to getting this drone, introduction to the new series, and with that, I'm just super excited to get out and shoot some things when we got some ND filters, because that fixed aperture, that's gonna be a pain. But leave your questions down in the comments below, and I'm just happy to start creating some content around it. Catch you in the next video. Take care.